Good afternoon. Today we are going to be talking just a little bit about the wonderfully intricate, complicated and convoluted world of the French horn. So, sit down, shut up and let's get on with it. Now this video is going to be in multiple parts because I can't really hope to convey all of the stuff that's out there in a concise manner in one video. So today's video is going to be a little bit about the history, how we got to this from its beginnings back hundreds of years ago. So let's transport back hundreds of years ago, the 1980s, even further back. We had instruments that didn't have valves, either rotary valves like we have here or piston valves like I've got there. We had instruments that were just coils of tubing with a mouthpiece at one end and a bell at the other end. Sort of like a bugle. A really simple unadorned bugle, mouthpiece at one end, bell at the other end. And these instruments had various shapes and sizes. We had little ones like this that have the coils all wrapped in what's pretending to be leather. And we had big long trumpets, fanfare trumpets and various things like that. But we also had a thing called the natural horn. Now this was effectively coils of tubing that looked like the French horn here, but without all of this boring stuff in the middle, without the valves and so forth. And so those instruments were limited in the amount of notes that they could play. They could only play notes that were part of a series of notes, and that series of notes is called the harmonic series, and something that most of you will have heard me blathering on about ad nauseum in previous videos. But let me recap for those of you who perhaps haven't seen those videos. The harmonic series is all of the notes that we can play on an instrument without having to move the valves. So in the case of the trumpet, we have a harmonic series that is in concert B flat. And on this instrument here, we have a harmonic series. Oh, I'm juggling things. We have a harmonic series that is in the key of concert E flat. And if we went to something like my mellophone in F, we'd have a harmonic series in the key of F. And so that harmonic series always follows the same principle. And that principle is that each harmonic is double the frequency of the interval before it. So if you had an interval, if your fundamental was 100 Hertz, your first harmonic would be 200 Hertz, then 300 Hertz, then 400 Hertz, and it would go on like that. And so what happens with that is that the intervals of the harmonic series get closer and closer the higher you go. You'll have the fundamental tone of the instrument, and then the first harmonic will be an octave difference, and then a fifth, and then a fourth, and then a third, and then a minor third, and so forth. And if you keep going up higher, those intervals get closer and closer and closer together. And so the issue that we had back in the time, before valves, is that we want those intervals in the harmonic series to be very close together. And so the way that they developed of doing that was to give an instrument lots and lots of tubing, but to have the bore and the mouthpiece proportioned as if it was a smaller instrument. And so we have the natural horn, as it was called, but this is its modern equivalent. We've got a instrument here that has the same amount of tubing as an F tuba, but the bore and mouthpiece are so small that we can take a standard trumpet mouthpiece and put a French horn mouthpiece inside it. That is how small the bore is. And so the result of that is that we have an instrument where the notes, the intervals of the harmonic series are very close together. Now those intervals are just effectively the whole thing, the whole harmonic series moved up an octave. We can get the lower harmonics, but the instrument's not designed to play them. In fact, you'll find it quite difficult to play them unless you sort of flop your bottom lip under the mouthpiece. And we could tie that principle with the second principle that I'm going to talk about, and that is we can adjust the tuning of a note by taking our hand and rummaging up the backside of an instrument. So if I was to play a note then shove my hand up inside it, you'll hear what happens to the tuning. And so skilled musicians could take those two principles together and play some basic scales. They had all of the harmonic intervals closer together, and they had some of the notes in between obtainable by adjusting how their hand was arranged up inside the bell of the instrument. They could still change the crooks, so they could add extra tuning slides to change the overall harmonic series, but it meant that French horn or natural horn players could actually contribute to society instead of just having a set limit of pieces that they could play, a set limit of notes that they could play. So that left us an instrument where you held it in your left hand, and all of the magic was done by arranging how you inserted your hand, and also from your embouchure. That became quite interesting when valves were developed. When they started adding valves to brass instruments, it presented an interesting conundrum. Do we retain the authenticity of music by having the hand as being an integral part, or do we go like all other instruments and sort of rearrange how the instrument is? Some clever spark thought, let's play the valves with the left hand and still have the right hand doing its scrunching thing. And so the result of that decision was we have one of two brass instruments, types of brass instruments, where the valves are articulated by the left hand instead of the right hand. The other is, of course, the Wagner tuba. Those two instruments, other than any custom-made instruments that you can get, are the only ones where the valves do stuff with the left hand. And as time has progressed, you start doing less and less with this hand. Now, this instrument is a single horn in F. It is a Con 14D that I purchased off eBay pretty cheaply. It has valves that are articulated by strings, string linkages here, and it is your student level instrument. It's not a double horn, it's a single horn, and I'll talk about what that means in subsequent videos. But it's something that for even somebody that's quite a capable brass musician, it is a very odd experience moving to a French horn, or even just trying to pick one up and play it. We've got the logistical difficulties. It's odd holding an instrument with this hand and have this hand do nothing other than have it sort of pitched as a Captain Hook sort of claw. It's odd having pressing valves with the left hand. That is very strange. And then you've got the unexpected difficulty of the intervals. It is very easy to mispitch your note and splatter something that covers many harmonics. If you just pick up a horn, it's very easy to do this. But of course that has very little musical value. Trying to play a simple melody becomes very difficult. You have to suddenly be aware of and embrace all of the subtleties of fine-tuning your embouchure to get just the interval, just the note that you want. And it is something that doesn't necessarily come naturally. It's something that you have to put a lot of work into. When I first picked up this instrument, I could barely play an intelligible scale. It was just a disaster because I approached this instrument as I'd approach a trumpet or a mellophone or something else. It's a very interesting and an unusual study to try and learn one of these things when it hasn't ever been part of your life. So anyway, that's part one, talking a little bit about this, the history of these instruments. It's very much a Reader's Digest condensed version. In the next video I'm going to talk about some of the different types of French horns we've got. Now please also remember that I'm currently running a fundraiser to have this French horn restored. It is my Joseph Little compensating double horn with this weird fourth horizontal valve. If you're at all able to help out with this restoration slash making it functioning project, please check out the link down below or by clicking on the little card thing that pops up in the corner. Anything you'd like me to talk about in particular about the French horns, also drop a comment below. Thanks very much for watching.